The pen feels heavier than it should in my hand. I'm sitting in Margaret Hayes's office in downtown Knoxville, Tennessee, the faint scent of coffee and old books in the air. The documents are spread across the mahogany desk, page after page of legal language that will change everything forever. I sign my name, Mackenzie Jade Wilson, on the first sheet, then the second, then the third. Each stroke feels final, permanent. My phone buzzes on the desk. The screen lights up with my sister's name. I take a slow breath, press speaker, and let the call connect. "Hey, have you sent the house papers yet?" Haley's voice comes through, tight with impatience. I look at the signed documents, then at Margaret's calm eyes across the desk. My voice is steady, almost gentle. "From now on, you no longer have any right to interfere with that house." Silence. Complete stunned silence on the other end. I can hear Haley's breathing stop, then her husband Nathan's low mutter in the background, something sharp and disbelieving. I don't wait for their reaction. I end the call, set the phone face down, and slide the final page toward Margaret for her witness signature. "Hi everyone, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is right now. You've probably never imagined your own family would treat you like bad luck on the most important day of their lives. I never did either. Until my sister's wedding day, when they looked at me, a single mom who'd just lost her husband, and told me to leave because I was bringing bad luck. The next morning, they called asking for the one thing my grandparents had left only to me, the house. What would you do if the people you loved most turned on you like that? Comment below, tell me where you're watching from, what time it is, and would you have done what I did? I read every single comment. A few weeks ago, I woke up before dawn to get ready for my sister Haley's wedding. I had driven 3 hours the night before from my quiet suburb outside Knoxville to Chattanooga, where the venue was, so I could be there early and help with anything they needed. I slipped into the navy blue dress I'd bought especially for the day. Knee-length, simple but elegant, the kind of thing I thought would fit the formal vibe Haley wanted. It cost me $200 I couldn't really spare, but I wanted to look nice for her. In my purse was an envelope with $15,000. Every extra shift I'd picked up at the hospital over the past year. Every night I'd come home exhausted from the ER. Every morning I dragged myself out of bed to keep going. I'd saved it all to give to Haley as a wedding gift. I also had a small velvet box with a silver necklace and earrings I'd picked out myself. Something delicate, something I thought she'd love. I arrived at the venue around 8 in the morning. The place was beautiful, a big historic ballroom with tall windows, white flowers everywhere, and staff rushing around setting up tables. I found Haley's mother-in-law and offered to help with the centerpieces. She smiled and thanked me, and for a while everything felt normal. I arranged roses, tied ribbons, chatted with distant cousins I hadn't seen in years. People kept telling me how pretty I looked, how proud I must be of my little sister. I smiled and nodded, feeling a quiet warmth inside. By the time the ceremony started, I was standing near the back, holding a small bouquet Haley had asked me to carry. When she walked down the aisle in her white lace dress, I felt tears prick my eyes. She looked radiant. Nathan stood at the altar, smiling wide, and I remember thinking how lucky she was to have found someone who looked at her like that. The vows were sweet, the kiss was perfect, and everyone clapped and cheered. I clapped too, harder than anyone, my heart full. After the ceremony, we moved to the reception hall. I found a spot near the dessert table, holding a glass of champagne, watching Haley dance with Nathan, laughing the way she always did when she was truly happy. I was planning to give her the envelope and the jewelry during a quiet moment, maybe when she came over to hug me or later when the music slowed down. I wanted to tell her how proud I was, how much I loved her, how much Daniel would have loved seeing her like this. Then I saw Haley walking toward me. Her smile was gone. Her face was flushed, her eyes hard. She stopped a few feet away and spoke loud enough for people nearby to hear. "Get out. Right now. Nathan doesn't want you here." I froze. The champagne glass felt slippery in my hand. I thought I'd misheard. What I managed to say, my voice small. Haley's jaw tightened. You heard me? You need to leave. You're ruining everything. Behind her, our parents stood a few steps away. Mom's arms were crossed, her lips pressed into a thin line. Dad looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything. Mom spoke next, her voice sharp and cold. A single mom like you shouldn't bring bad luck to your sister's wedding. Just go. The words hit me like a slap. The music was still playing, people were still laughing and dancing, but everything around me seemed to fade. I could feel eyes turning toward us, whispers starting. My face burned. I looked at Haley, my little sister, the one I'd helped raise when Mom was working late, the one I'd driven to dance class, the one I'd stayed up with when she had her first heartbreak. And now she was telling me to leave because I was bad luck. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just nodded once, set my champagne glass on the nearest table, picked up my purse and walked out. My heels clicked on the marble floor loud in my ears. I passed tables of smiling guests, past the photographer who looked confused, past the flower girl who stared up at me. No one said a word. I pushed through the double doors into the bright afternoon sun and kept walking to my car. I didn't cry until I was inside, engine running, air conditioning blasting cold air against my face. I sat there for a long minute, staring at the venue through the windshield, the beautiful building with ivy on the walls, the laughter spilling out the windows. Inside, my sister was celebrating her new life. And I was alone in the parking lot, still holding the envelope with $15,000 and the silver jewelry I'd never get to give her. The highway stretched dark and empty ahead of me as I drove back from Chattanooga. Headlights cut through the night, catching rows of tall pines along the shoulder. The radio stayed off. All I could hear was the steady hum of the engine and my own uneven breathing. About halfway home, I pulled onto the shoulder, killed the lights, and just sat there. My hands shook on the steering wheel. Tears came then, hot and fast, the kind that make your chest hurt. I thought about Daniel, how he'd died 2 years ago in that pileup on I-40, how I'd gotten the call at 3 a.m, how I'd had to wake our 5-year-old daughter and tell her daddy wasn't coming home. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of the window and let the sobs come until there was nothing left. Eventually, I started driving again. The miles passed in silence. When I finally pulled into the driveway in the quiet suburb outside Knoxville, the porch light was still on, the one I always leave burning when I'm away. The house looked exactly the same as when I'd left that morning, 4 bedrooms, white, siding the big oak tree in the front yard Daniel and I had planted the year we moved in. I sat in the car for a long time, staring at it, feeling like a stranger in my own life. I walked up the steps and sat on the porch swing. My fingers found the old ceramic mug my grandfather used to drink his tea from, the one he left behind when he passed. I held it, still smelling faintly of chamomile, and memories flooded back. One afternoon, maybe 3 years ago, Granddad had sat right here beside me on this very swing. He was already frail, but his voice was steady. He'd handed me the mug and said, "Mackenzie, your grandmother and I bought this house back in 1980 when I was still working as a civil engineer. We paid cash for it, every overtime shift, every weekend job. We never wanted it to go to anyone else. You're our oldest grandchild, and we know how hard things are for you. We see how your parents always put Haley first. So I made sure the will is clear, the house is yours alone. No one can touch it. It's your safety net, your place to stand, when the world feels like it's falling out from under you." He'd squeezed my hand then, the skin thin but the grip firm. "You're stronger than you know," he'd added, "and this house will always be here for you." I sat there on the porch until the sky turned from black to deep blue, the mug still in my hands. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of pine and cut grass. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once. I looked at the house, the home Daniel and I had filled with laughter, the place where our daughter took her first steps, the place where I'd cried myself to sleep after the funeral. It had always felt like a promise that no matter what happened, I'd have somewhere safe. And now, after what Haley and my parents had done, that promise felt more fragile than ever. but it was still mine. And I wasn't going to let anyone take it away. Sunlight poured through the kitchen window the next morning. I stood at the counter spooning coffee into the filter, trying to focus on the simple routine. The house was quiet except for the soft gurgle of the machine. My daughter was still asleep upstairs, and for a moment everything felt almost normal. Then my phone rang on the table. Haley's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for a second before answering. "Hey," I said, voice flat. "Hi, sis," she replied, her tone overly bright, like someone forcing a smile. "I hope you're okay after yesterday. I just wanted to check in. And, have you had a chance to look for those house papers?" My stomach twisted. I set the coffee mug down harder than I meant to. "You're calling about the house?" I asked. "After everything at the wedding?" She hesitated, then continued in that same light, almost cheerful voice. "Well, yeah. Nathan and I were talking last night. We really need to sell it. We found this perfect place downtown. 3 bedrooms, great location. We could pay off our credit cards and have enough left to start the little boutique we've always talked about. You know how tight money's been." I sank into a chair, fingers gripping the edge of the table. "You're asking me to hand over the house so you can buy a new one and open a store." "It's not like that," she said quickly. "It's just practical. You're 33, raising a kid alone. That big house is too much for you. You'd be better off in something smaller, maybe closer to us. We could even help you find a place." I closed my eyes. The kitchen smelled of coffee, but it suddenly felt bitter on my tongue. "Haley," I said slowly, "Granddad and Grandma left that house to me alone, in the will. They made it clear. You know that." She sighed, the fake cheer slipping a little. "Look, they're gone now. And honestly, it's not fair that one person gets everything. We're family. We should share." Nathan's parents even said the same thing. It's just sitting there wasting space. I felt the anger rise sharp and hot. "So yesterday you told me I was bad luck and kicked me out of your wedding, and today you want me to give you the house because it's wasting space." There was a pause. When she spoke again, her voice had an edge. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. I'm trying to be nice here. Just send the papers, okay? I can text you the address for overnight delivery." I stared at the coffee pot, watching the dark liquid drip slowly. "Haley," I said, "do you even hear yourself? You humiliated me in front of everyone. You let Mom and Dad stand there and call me bad luck. And now you're calling me like nothing happened, asking for the one thing that's truly mine." Her tone sharpened. "You're being selfish. Nathan and I are starting our life together. We need this. You don't." I stood up, walking to the window and looking out at the yard. The garden Daniel and I had planted, the swing set we'd bought for our daughter. "I'm not sending anything," I told her. She laughed, short and incredulous. "You're serious? After everything we've done for you, Mom and Dad are going to be so disappointed." I ended the call before she could say another word. The kitchen was silent again. I poured the coffee, but my hands were shaking so badly that some spilled over the rim. I sat back down, staring at the mug, feeling the weight of the morning settle over me like a blanket I couldn't shake off. The call lasted for hours. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee growing cold in front of me, listening to Haley's voice fill the room through the speaker. She kept talking about the new house, the boutique, how excited Nathan was, how perfect everything would be once they had the money. Every word felt like a fresh cut. I took a deep breath and finally spoke. "Haley, do you remember when you were little, Mom and Dad always called you their sweet little girl who needed protecting? When you turned 18, they sold Granddad's old truck to buy you that shiny new SUV for college. When you graduated, they handed you $50,000 to start your shop. I was right there watching it all happen. I was working night shifts in the ER, paying off my own student loans, buying a second-hand car with cash I'd saved for months, raising my daughter alone. Your grandparents saw everything." Haley made a small, impatient sound. That was ages ago. They saw how Mom and Dad treated us differently. I continued, my voice steady. Granddad told them straight to their faces one day, "Mackenzie has been through too much already. This house is the last thing we can give her to make up for it. No one touches it. That's why the will is crystal clear. The house belongs to me alone." Mom and Dad even signed the acknowledgement right there in the lawyer's office. They agreed. There was a long pause. Then Haley cut in, her tone sharp. "Stop bringing up old stories. I'm trying to build my own life now. Nathan and I need this. You're being selfish." I heard Mom's voice in the background, muffled at first, then clearer as she took the phone. "Mackenzie, honey, listen to your sister. You're the older one. You should be thinking about her future. Share the house. It's the right thing to do." My chest tightened. The right thing. Yesterday you stood behind Haley at her wedding and told me a single mom like me was bringing bad luck. You watched her kick me out in front of everyone. And now you're asking me to give up the only thing my grandparents left me. Silence stretched across the line. I could hear Dad breathing, the faint clink of a coffee cup, Nathan muttering something in the background. Mom finally spoke again, softer this time, almost pleading. "We didn't mean to hurt you yesterday. It was a stressful day." Haley was emotional. "But this is different. This is family." "Family," I repeated quietly. "Family doesn't humiliate someone one day and then demand their inheritance the next." Haley grabbed the phone back. "You're twisting everything. We're not asking for everything. Just the house. You'll still have your job, your daughter, your life. We're starting from nothing here." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the yard where my daughter's swing set sat empty in the morning light. "Haley," I said, "Granddad and Grandma didn't leave me that house because they thought I was weak. They left it because they knew I'd need it one day. They knew Mom and Dad would always put you first. And they were right. Look at what happened yesterday." Mom's voice came through again, sharper now. "You're holding a grudge over something that happened years ago. Let it go. Do this for your sister." I felt the anger rise, steady and cold. "I'm not holding a grudge," I said. "I'm protecting what was given to me. You all made your choice yesterday. Now I'm making mine." Haley's voice cracked with frustration. "You're unbelievable. You'd rather keep a big empty house than help your own family." "It's not empty," I answered. "It's my home. And it's staying that way." I ended the call. The kitchen fell silent again, only the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. I stared at the phone in my hand, heart pounding, and realized something had shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, raw and deep, but beneath it was something harder, something final. I wasn't going to let them take anything else from me. I drove straight to Margaret Hayes's office in downtown Knoxville that afternoon. The traffic was light, and the city looked peaceful under the winter sun, but my mind was racing. I parked on the street, walked up the steps to the small brick building, and pushed open the door. Margaret greeted me with a calm smile and led me to the conference room. I sat down and told her everything. I started with the wedding, how Haley had screamed at me to leave, how my parents had stood there and called me bad luck because I was a single mom. I told her about the drive home, the sleepless night, and the phone call the next morning when Haley asked for the house papers as if nothing had happened. I explained how she and Nathan wanted to sell it to buy a new place downtown, pay off debt, and start a boutique. I told Margaret about my grandparents' will, how they had left the house to me alone, and how my parents had signed off on it years ago. Margaret listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she set her pen down and looked at me steadily. "Mackenzie, you have several options," she said. "The house is titled in your name, and the will is ironclad. No one can force you to sell or transfer it. But if you want to protect it permanently, we can set up a charitable trust. You transfer the property to a nonprofit organization that supports single mothers. There are several excellent ones here in Tennessee. The organization would own the house, but we can include a lifetime occupancy agreement. That means you and your daughter can live there rent-free for as long as you want. You keep full use of the home, but you can never sell it, mortgage it, or pass it on. Once the transfer is recorded, it's irrevocable. No court can undo it. I felt the weight in my chest ease for the first time in days. That's exactly what I want, I said. I want to make sure no one can ever take it from me or my daughter again, and I like the idea of it helping other single moms who need a safe place. Margaret smiled gently. We'll use the Tennessee nonprofit that runs transitional housing for single mothers. They have a program specifically for women in your situation. The transfer will be a charitable donation, so you'll get a tax deduction as well, but more importantly, the house will be protected forever. She pulled out a thick folder and walked me through the documents. There were pages of legal descriptions, the deed, the lifetime occupancy agreement, and the donation forms. I read every line carefully. Margaret explained each part patiently, the irrevocable nature of the trust, how the nonprofit would handle maintenance and taxes, how the occupancy clause guaranteed my right to stay. She made sure I understood that once I signed, the house would no longer be part of my estate. No one could claim it after I was gone. I thought about the other mothers I'd met at the hospital, women who'd lost everything, who were sleeping in cars or shelters with their kids. I pictured them walking into that house feeling safe for the first time in years. The thought made my eyes sting. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake this time. I signed my full name, Mackenzie Jade Wilson, on every page where Margaret indicated. She witnessed each signature, stamped the documents, and sealed them in an envelope. It's done, she said quietly. The transfer will be recorded with the county tomorrow. From this moment, the house belongs to the nonprofit. But you and your daughter are protected for life. I leaned back in the chair and let out a long breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The room felt lighter, as if a heavy fog had lifted. I thanked Margaret, shook her hand, and walked out into the afternoon sun. For the first time since the wedding, I felt something like peace. The house wasn't just mine anymore. It was a promise, kept, a legacy turned into something bigger than me. And no one could ever take it away again. I sat in Margaret's office for a few more minutes after signing, letting the reality settle. The envelope with the recorded deed was sealed and ready for filing. Margaret gave me a reassuring nod and said she'd handle the rest. I walked out into the late afternoon light, climbed into my car, and drove home. The house looked the same as always, but something inside me had shifted for good. That evening, after putting my daughter to bed, I picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over Haley's name. I knew what I had to do. I dialed, pressed speaker so Margaret could hear if needed, and waited. Haley answered on the second ring, her voice already edged with impatience. Hey, did you finally send the papers? I took a slow breath. No. And I never will. A beat of silence. Then her tone sharpened. What do you mean? You said you'd think about it. I did think about it, I said calmly. And I decided the house is no longer something you can touch. I transferred ownership to a nonprofit that helps single mothers. They own it now. But I have a lifetime occupancy agreement, so my daughter and I will stay here as long as we need. You'll never get it. The line went dead quiet. Then Haley's voice exploded. What, you can't do that? That's our family's house. It was never our house, I answered. Granddad and Grandma made sure it was mine alone, and now it's protected forever. I heard Nathan in the background, his voice rising. You're unbelievable. You'd rather give it away to strangers than help your own sister. Haley started crying loud, angry sobs. You're destroying everything. We had plans. We needed that money. I kept my voice even. You had plans that required taking what wasn't yours. You humiliated me at your wedding. You let Mom and Dad call me bad luck. You called me selfish for not handing over the one thing my grandparents left me. This is the consequence of those choices. Mom's voice cut in sharp and trembling. Mackenzie, how could you do this to your sister? To your family? I'm protecting my daughter's future. I said. The same way Granddad protected mine. Haley was sobbing harder now. You're heartless, I hate you. Nathan grabbed the phone. This is insane. We'll fight you. We'll take you to court. You can't just... You can try, I interrupted. But the transfer is irrevocable. Margaret Hayes is the attorney who handled it. It's already recorded. There's nothing you can do. The line went chaotic. Haley crying, Nathan shouting, Mom pleading. I listened for a moment longer, then spoke one last time. This is the consequence of what you all did to me. Goodbye. I ended the call. My finger hovered over the block button for a second before I pressed it. I blocked Haley's number, then Nathan's, then my parents'. The phone went silent. I sat in the quiet living room, the only light coming from the lamp on the side table. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was from relief. I had done what I needed to do. The house was safe. My daughter's future was safe. And for the first time since the wedding, I felt like I could breathe. I walked upstairs, checked on my sleeping daughter, and then went to bed. Tomorrow would be a new day, and for once I wasn't afraid of what it might bring. 8 months have passed since I signed those papers in Margaret's office. Life has quietly moved forward, but the changes have been profound. Without the house sale, Haley and Nathan's dreams unraveled fast. The downtown condo they wanted slipped away, their credit card debt already heavy from the wedding, and Nathan's failed business ideas kept climbing. Haley picked up extra shifts at the boutique, but it wasn't enough. The fight started small, snapping over bills, then shouting matches that lasted late into the night. By early summer, they filed for divorce. It was quick, quiet, and final. Nathan moved back to Chattanooga to live with his parents. Haley stayed in Knoxville working 2 jobs and barely scraping by. My parents, who had relied on Haley's financial help for years, suddenly felt the strain. They couldn't keep up with the mortgage on their old house, so they sold it and moved into a small 1-bedroom rental on the outskirts of town. I heard through a distant cousin that Dad's heart condition has worsened and Mom spends most days alone. I don't reach out. I don't send cards. I don't visit. The silence between us is complete and deliberate. I still live in the same house in the quiet suburb outside Knoxville. The nonprofit that now owns the property handles the taxes and major repairs, and I pay a small monthly fee, just enough to remind me the house is no longer mine alone. The garden is thriving again. The swing set is full of laughter every afternoon. My daughter runs barefoot across the lawn, her little feet leaving prints in the grass. The place feels lighter now, as if it's breathing freely for the first time in years. I started volunteering with the organization that owns the house. Every weekend, I help new single mothers move in, teach budgeting workshops, or simply sit and listen when they need to talk. I've seen women arrive with nothing but their children and a suitcase, and I've watched them leave stronger with jobs, apartments, and hope. It's the most meaningful work I've ever done. A portion of my nursing income now goes directly to the program. Money I once saved for emergencies is now used to give others a fresh start. Sometimes I think about the wedding day, the champagne glass I set down, the long walk out of the ballroom, the drive home in the dark. I don't feel rage anymore. There's only a quiet sadness for the family I thought I had. I used to believe blood meant everything. Now I know better. Family isn't just the people you're born to. It's the ones who show up when you need them, who respect your boundaries, who love you without keeping score. I look at my daughter playing in the yard and feel a deep, steady peace. She has a safe home, a mother who will fight for her, and a future that no one can take away. That's more than enough. If you're watching this and you've ever been told you're too much, too difficult, or bad luck just because life dealt you a hard hand, know this: your worth isn't measured by how others treat you. It's measured by how you treat yourself and the people who truly deserve your love. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for them is to let people face the natural consequences of their choices. I chose to protect what was mine, and in doing so, I found freedom. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, you are never alone.